Okay. Today's what, June 2nd? Halfway? No, not quite halfway through the year, I think. So it's all downhill from here, right? I think that's the case for all of our meetings. It started at a peak and then just go downhill rapidly or gradually. Um, so we have a couple things we want to talk about today. We've got the book Nook. We're going to talk about the original ZX81 manual, not to be confused with the Americanized version, the Timex Sinclair 1000 manual. We were just talking before the meeting started, and Mark showed us a couple copies of the manual that he has. And my experience with the manual has always been that it was, wire or comb bound as an American. And Mark's holding them up for me in a second. I'm going to spotlight Mark. Uh,
Yep.
and Mark has, there we go, a wire bound, which is, what most of us have experienced, and then a perfect bound, which I have never seen before. And it kind of raises an interesting question of one of the things about the manual, at least in my experience, was, you'd have it open next to the computer, right? Flat, laying out flat. And with the perfect bound edition, that would be a bit of a challenge. You'd end up destroying this vine. First published in 1980 by Sinclair Research. This says it is the second edition of 81, reprinted in 82 and 83. Interesting.
They must have revised it later, 81.
Yeah, I wonder what the differences are between the wire one that we experience and the perfect bound one that Mark, can you just do a quick comparison in the next hour or so? Just go through each page and figure out what the differences are.
I wonder if there's
Uh,
a page count
okay.
difference.
I'm being a smart aleck, Mark.
Certainly remember the one that I played with in the UK was wire-bound. I never seen these hot
Yeah.
the glue-bound ones.
Well, in terms of publishing, it's certainly cheaper to make
Yeah.
or less expensive to make perfect bound. But for at the time, for short runs, it would be easier to make those wire bound ones.
But there's also a functional value to that, as you said, right? You can't fold that, just you can't just flop it open on a page.
Yeah, yeah, you'd have
Um,
to
it's kind of ruined your ability to learn programming from it for whatever reason.
break the spine there.
On
Uh,
the subject of books, by the way, has anybody got these John Harris? So John Harris is the guy who did the artwork
the
for
artwork, yeah.
um
Is this like a collection of his artwork or something?
yeah, if you I got these on the eBay. I think they may be shipped from the UK, but this is a collection of his artwork here. It's actually quite, you know, quite surreal.
Are they
Yeah.
new? I mean, are they recently printed or are they for old school from back in the day?
Let's I think they're relatively recent publications. Let me see if I can find a date.
Well, I'm looking on Google.
Well, this says 2014 and this is
Recent paper.
The blue one maybe
I think that
2022.
might be the second book. So they're not that new. Oh, sorry, second. This is volume two. Volume two is 2022.
Okay.
So quite recent. And that's recent in our eyes. We're looking at the ZX81 manual. So,
Yeah, and of course you see the direct relationship between this
right.
art and that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
so
that's that
Adam and Ryan, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Oh,
the 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 Cambridge Museum was selling the prints of the of that cut of this cover art, and that's one I picked up when I was there. I still got to mount that up.
is it on quality poster paper?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. Okay. Well, why don't you tell them what, because you used this manual to learn programming back in the day. So why don't you start there?
Yeah, I'll just recall very old memories. Let's just adjust this.
Yeah. You're not used to my setup, so there you go.
Yeah, that'll work.
2/3 or half of the Albuquerque user group,
That's
one location.
well,
So yeah, well, one, I've not really looked at I've not really looked at this in depth in many years. You know, the most most stuff recently would just be, jumping in the back to look at the character set reference. That's what usually I was in the manual for, um, most often.
and it is this,
Um,
am I correct? Like I have many more questions. Maybe if I do a Q&A asking you or in the
yeah.
group in general, people can get back to me and just answer, you know? Like so when I look through the manual, like it's a step-by-step introduction of programming for someone who's never used a computer in their life. By the time you're done, where you think you're expected to be about? Peoples?
Well,
Oh,
if
well,
you started on a 1,000 on the 1,000, right?
I don't know how many of us did. I know I certainly did. That's what I saved my money for and bought one, a TS 1000. So that's what, so I had never really been familiar with, I mean, I did have some Apple IIs at school, high school. I don't really did any programming on it. But so the 1000 for me was definitely my introduction to BASIC. And then of course, that was a stepping stone to assembly language. Because there is, I believe, some assembly language kind of talked about in the ZX81 or the TS 1000 manual. They kind of talk about that. So it kind of piqued your interest of, oh wow, I can do, I can talk into computers language, and get things done a lot faster, right? Than learning to do BASIC, which you learn that it's an interpreted language, and so it kind of has to convert what you type in into machine language, which it natively runs. So I mean, that kind of was how I learned how that kind of worked, right? As far as that, but I mean, I mean, you learn the basics on there. You can print things on the screen, move things around. I think even some geometric functions, maybe I think like plot and I think they make you do a program in there where you can make circles and things like that, or use logarithmic functions, make a sine wave and plot it out. So, I mean, that's kind of I certainly learned a lot from that book. Um, that was what I kind of remember, but it's pretty foggy.
Sure.
Was the TS 1000 manual different than the ZX81 manual? Or were they basically the same thing?
I think they
Sure.
were basically the same thing.
I don't think so.
well,
Really.
I think they're a lot closer than the 2068 manual is to the spectrum.
I
Yeah.
mean, they're laid out totally different, really. I don't know. I mean, I have never compared them. I'm not going to do it online for you, David. But it's
But
surprising. I thought more people would have memories of using the 81, but I guess this is mostly a US group, or not US group, but it's not. It's from Timex. It's a Timex. It's supposed to be TS 2068. So what are we talking about this system for?
Well,
well,
um,
it's actually near and dear to my heart in a way because I bought the ZX81, right?
Okay.
Carl described and my version of the manual, it's very similar. It has the
Okay.
machine, it touches on all the key stuff that you need to be able to do to not only do just simple programming, but get into some real, detailed machine code if you want to. So it's a really comprehensive, cool reference tool.
I guess the big thing is who wrote the manuals. If you see the authors of the ZX81 manual and the authors of the TS 1000s, I don't really think they
Yeah,
changed.
it is. Yeah, it's well, the ZX81 manual is written by Stephen Vickers, and
Hmm.
the 1000 is written by Stephen Vickers with revisions by Charles F. Durang.
Durang, yeah.
yeah.
Well, the
He authored
keyboard is
the
slightly different.
he authored the
You have enter,
2068.
rub out, delete.
What was that?
I said the keyboard, like when you want on the TS1000, it's delete, and on the ZX81's rub out. I think.
Yeah.
A new line versus
And then
enter.
time,
Yeah.
yeah, and enter and
Well, all of the US machines had that keyboard, not just the TS1000. The US ZX81s had a US layout keyboard, which
Yep.
was just different labelings. And I think that, yeah, I haven't really looked at the actual differences with the TS1000 manual. That's something I've been meaning to get to.
That brings up a question of, okay, so the US versions of the ZX81s that they sold here from Sinclair, did they have a revised manual, or did they just use the same ZX81 manual that the British version had?
Well,
See?
I think it's just slightly revised for some small differences in the TV and things like that, and the power.
Did the US models have 2K rather than 1?
Yeah.
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 It gives you some extra options, I get. Sorry, which one you said had rub out rather than delete?
ZX81.
UK ones
Yeah.
have rub out and line and new line.
New line.
Rub
Right.
out and new line.
Yeah.
The difference is in the CX81 manual, they mention Sinclair Research, and in the TF1000, they mention Timex in Waterbury, Connecticut. This is the main difference between the manuals, and also the front page.
Yeah, by the time you get to the 1000, though, they were more heavily revising it.
Yeah.
So I
And
think,
that's it.
as far as I know, there's not a huge difference between the US and UK CX81 manuals.
And that kind of brings up a point that for Ryan, I know Ryan, no, who got a ZX81? I think it was Tim. Tim actually got a ZX81 from Sinclair Research that was a USA model. But, I don't know that those had 2K. I know the 1000s had 2K, but I think all the ZX...
None of the 81s had 2K. That's
Okay.
the Timex thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So
Because I got mine even after the TS1000 started shipping. My order was at the end of just as they had switched over and Sinclair was selling out their stock of 81s, but I didn't know at the time Timex had started to sell the 1000s. And so they sold the 81s, the same US 81s that they had been selling. And the only change was the price, because the price had dropped.
right.
And then eventually, and there's an ad for it somewhere I've seen, which Sinclair out of New Hampshire was selling TS1000s once they ran out of the 81 stock.
Yeah, mine was sent from Nashua, New Hampshire. I still got the box.
Yep. Well, so the big thing is to take away from this is, okay, so all the US ZX81s only had 1K, but they had the US keyboard. So
Right.
there's the differentiation there.
And they had the US RF modulator too.
Right, obviously, yeah.
And so I think the manual just had the changes of, the TV channels, the power, and probably not a lot else other than maybe spelling. I guess I don't really remember, but I think largely the text is the same as I understand it.
Ryan, in your copy, you have a CX81 manual, and do you have one as well, Adam? Do you guys both have it?
I have one. Mine was sent to
So-
me by Stuart in 2023 just as a gift, which was nice of him.
Okay. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, I think it is, talks about using new line.
Okay, is this something we're looking up? Is this
Yeah, that's what I'm curious to see what your manual says.
This is the copy protection test.
That's right. Look on
Are we
page
really
14.
together? Like,
That's the seventh word on page.
Oh,
Very much so. And the reason I'm asking this is because the 1000 manual is enter and delete, right?
Yeah, so right there,
And this one says what? New line or enter?
even got the key symbols, function enter.
Function enter. Okay. Okay. So they did.
Talks about the enter key. So they've changed those elements
Okay.
so that you're not completely wondering what's going on.
But I thought Adam said that the layout or like the chapters were different. Were
No,
they?
he's talking about the 1000 manual.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I
Yeah.
mean, as opposed to the ZX81. So the
Well,
chapters
yes,
are different.
That's
No,
that's
it's not completely different. No. But it is slightly different. It is not completely different. Like if I was to compare chapter for chapter, I think, let's see, getting started, it's broken down a little bit differently, but it's the same contents, it seems like. It seems like it's a little lighter on the Timex 1000, but that's,
No, the pages are like half the thickness.
is that what it is? By
Yeah.
weight, by volume?
I mean, these are like,
Yeah, I know.
these are
They're
sturdy.
cardboard. They're
They're
cardboard.
sturdy.
Okay.
Makes it really thick.
Yeah.
But have you ever noticed that in the ZX81 manual, it always uses an ampersand instead of the word and?
Interesting.
No,
You
but
haven't noticed?
well, I haven't really looked at, no,
It
like
never says A and D, but always the ampersand symbol.
really.
Really.
I'm gonna have to trust you on that.
Just pick any page. And you will
You're
notice
making me put on my glasses
And,
and
and
everything.
Mark, you're saying in the text.
Anytime they use
in
the
the
word
text.
Yeah, they don't use the word and, they just use the ampersand, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is
Wow.
kind of interesting.
Wow, that's really saving on typesetting.
that's true.
But
How bizarre.
okay, I'm gonna take your word for it because I don't see either an ampersand or the word. Oh, here's the word and. This is in the 81 manual you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they use the word and.
I wonder
they?
if it's just the English.
Maybe because you have a third edition, maybe they changed it for that. I noticed your perfect bound one was third edition, and this is first edition, where they actually could splurge for all the letters for the and.
Right.
Yeah, that was, I mean, kind of my jokes about punch card programming aside, where I would always joke that, a space on a punch card was like a vowel in Wheel of Fortune. You had to buy it, pay money extra for a space. And so that seems to be like these other basics. Have you ever seen people program other basics? They leave out all the spaces for speed and compactness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, Timex, or rather Sinclair gave us the spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go to the first chapter, setting up your ZX81.
Okay. Chapter
2,
one.
the computer. This has 3 jack sockets marked 9 volts DC in and ampersand mic.
No, not for us. It says the word and. I mean,
Really?
yeah, I don't know if you
I see.
really can't make it clear whatsoever. Is this clear enough to read?
Yes, but let me share. I found an online copy.
I mean,
this is.
I was gonna do that, but then I couldn't.
This is what Mark's talking about. Is this?
oh yeah, I understand what it must mean, but yeah, that's not what it says here.
That must have been somebody's OCD that revised it, decided that I'm going to shorten all these to a symbol.
Yeah. Right, and
But I don't think they're all that way because I think there's ands further down that
No.
really.
Huh.
Look at the very last line. There's an ampersand and an and.
Comma ampersand.
ampersand and yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Missed one. We'll have to
It's so
find
bizarre.
the guy.
I think you'll find a lot more spelled out later on too. So
So I will note, let's go up to, does it have the steps 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
A power supply. Okay. Second sentence. If by accident you plug it into the wrong socket in the computer, you will do no damage. I don't want to hear ever again anyone saying, I don't know, you might blow something up, possibly. No.
I'm sure we've all done it, haven't we?
Well, there's also the English usage of mains.
Mains, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, that always threw me off. I was like, what are mains?
Yeah.
Wait a
Yeah, I'm
minute.
thinking about the circuitry there
Oh,
for the
okay,
ear and the
that's
mic.
different. That's different.
We don't need to go through this whole manual line by line. We have other.
I don't
we
think
have-
we should
Sure, because
really.
this is kind of amusing.
No, I think
That's
in
a good
this
task for AI.
I think in
So-
this phrase is because the original computer is 230 volts, and is the high voltage in home is similar to the Argentina. If we can plug any device in 110, you explode the device, but not in reverse.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't.
No,
Yeah, that's.
you
I
don't
think-
you don't have AC at the plug
Yeah.
there that's going in. That's 9 volts. It's not.
Well, I think Gustavo might be mentioning the
That's
the AC adapter itself. So the British ones are all 220, and so back in those days, they were just linear, transformers and
Yeah.
bridge rectifiers, and they didn't have multi-voltage transformers. So if you plugged the 221 in here in the US, with the low voltage, 110, you wouldn't do anything wrong to it really. It would just put out a lower voltage, right? But if you plug one of ours over to 220, well, that would amplify the voltage, more, and then it would
Isn't this-
cause.
all of this
more
is
to do
talking
with the
about.
fact that all the plugs are the same, the fact that the
They're
mic in and
Well,
audio
that
out.
well, that's
APH
true. I mean,
jacks,
I mean,
the
Yeah.
what were they
quarter.
thinking in the 80s? They were so cheap, they made everything.
Well, it was cheaper. It was cheaper to put like a 0.1 microfarad capacitor to block the DC than to use a different size connector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And Clive was, if nothing, thrifty. You'd think he was Scot. You'd think he was a Scotsman.
But what this was talking about is 9 volts DC.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with AC.
Yeah.
9 volts DC into the ear of the mic is fine. Has nothing to do
Hey guys,
with the main.
I just want to keep in mind this is the book Nook segment and not like an entire
This is
episode.
so I don't know. We can go on with the trivia of the typography, or we can get down to the content of the book.
But
I think we've long
like how
passed-
people use programming. This for programming. I seem to recall, like in the UK, from both the ZX81 and the Spectrum, we threw this manual mostly to the side and picked up these like Penguin, like there would be third-party books,
Yeah.
and it would be endless things to type in, right? Hangman and whatever. And I seem to recall like flipping through this manual and moving quickly onto something that gave me more joyful things to play with.
Okay, so that's a good way to kind of segue into what I want to talk to you about after we talk about the next manual, which is a 2068 manual. I do want to continue the book Nook and talk about like some people who have favorite books from that era, like after they moved on from these manuals and had like a book that they would type in programs from, which I did, and I look back at myself doing that sometimes. I'm like, oh my God. And especially when some of the back of the books would say for, $12 you could get a disc with it on there, and then, you could save all the typing. So,
But
Oh, you're a little bit later.
what about the 1500? I would have thought if you wanted to see like small differences, the 1500 manual would
Oh.
be.
we can do that one. Yeah.
I'm curious how much they cheaped out and reused the content from the ZX81 for that.
All right. So next one, you guys, do you have the 1500 one?
Nope.
No. So someone else is going to have to be total control. Who's the control?
It's very different.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all it's got all these I
Well,
know
the cartoons, because
Oh,
yeah, that
okay.
was the same authors, I think, that the 2068 manual. What's her name?
Well, Illustrator, but
Yeah,
Chuck
the
Chuck
Dave.
was the author.
Judith Richland.
Yeah, Judith Richland
Fine.
was the
Okay.
illustrator. Now, David, are there pictures of a woman with a cat?
You man.
Looking for a picture with a woman with a cat?
Yeah, we were joking around with about the 2068 manual last time, and how the thing that stood out most for me was that I most remember was those ridiculous illustrations, and
The guy with a dog.
oh, I'm gonna have to go back to the 1500 manual.
That's what happened to Ryan when he got here. He was attacked by my dog. So maybe you have a follow-up question?
Is it Chris? He blew through this.
Oh yeah, he walked. It was Chris. He walked away from the camera. But he was the one who said he had other books to talk about. But we'll try to cover that next time.
But
or time after.
No, I just
your point and what Chris said.
He went skipped this and went straight to other books
Oh.
because they had type-ins.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
So Chris was Ryan. Ryan has a question for you directly.
Well, I'm not really sure what the question is, but you said that you kind of blew through this and went straight to something with more type-in programs, from what it sounded like.
Yeah, I mean, what was I don't remember what the books were. I was like,
well, I don't. Yeah, it's not. I don't even know the books. It was more of like the reasoning and the thinking.
Yeah, the thinking was that the stuff looked more fun. I mean, what I didn't really do constructive learning to program on the ZX81. I think it was more of like, oh, there's something to type in. I think it was a couple of years later before I tried to actually write anything myself. So you got the magazines, but also there were I think like Penguin was one of the publishers of books that did 100 adventure games or whatever it was, and
Yeah.
you could
have many books like that.
and there would be a short to convince your parents that you're going to learn something, there would be a little description in it on how it worked, each of the things, right? And then you go and type them in. I think I'm scarred for life though with the ZX81 because you start typing that stuff in and then things would crash.
There is a woman with a cat.
Wow. Well,
I
would have.
It looks like a crazy old cat lady too.
Well, I know too with me, I went through chapter by chapter. I don't know how many other people did that. Even with the 2068 manual, I did. Because I wanted to learn it from cover to cover, and so I do remember going chapter through chapter and doing all the examples and everything, because I kind of figured that's how you're going to learn how to use this thing, right? Is to actually do everything in the manual. The 2068, I think there was some manuals or sections I kind of skipped because I wasn't too interested. Like maybe it was like the plotting, the circles and the stuff. I know the sound was really interesting to me because that was a big chunk of manual there, because they had to explain the AY sound generator. And that was a huge chapter. And I still don't think I totally, really understood it. But yeah, you typed in some of the things that played some music, and it's like, okay, I get it. So if I'm going to become a musician on this thing, then I'll probably need to come back and refer to that chapter again, which I never did.
I came to my CX81 from kind of a weird route because my basic computer experience, my computer experience was learning Fortran 4 at the University of Minnesota, and then kind of went on doing other things. And I learned BASIC from the ZX81, and it was a slow computer, but after that and being introduced to basics on other machines, I thought, boy, these other basics suck in comparison. They're a little faster, but
so Jeff, the 81 was your intro to BASIC, right?
Yeah.
And Carl, was that sort of the same for you?
More or less. I mean, like I said, I was going to high school at the time, and so they had apples there, and so I had kind of played a little bit in Apple Basic.
Okay.
But mainly it was you'd load up a game or something like that, and I think there was some friends. A friend of mine had a VIC 20, so I kind of we would kind of play a little bit in that, but those were just very small chunks of time. I didn't have like with the TS 1000, I had hours and hours of time to play with that, right? Whereas these other machines, it was just a limited time that you had during class, or when I went to visit my friend, we'd play a little bit on the VIC 20. But the big difference was, of course, the keywords, right? None of the other machines use keywords. Even the TI-99, you had to type all that in, and so I was kind of I remember thinking to myself, well, seems to be more efficient. You want to print, hit P, and then bam, the whole print comes up. You don't have to type all the letters in. But you don't learn until later that can be a limitation too, because it adds complexity, right? You got to do all the different modes, keyword mode, graphics mode, extended mode. So that's why you got to read the manual, man. Learn how to use those modes.
Yeah.
Along with trying to find out where that particular damn thing, like if it's not print, right, and it's some keyword that doesn't start with the same letter as the key.
Right.
You're like, where is it?
You had spent a lot of time, looking around on the keyboard. That's for sure.
Has anybody seen this? Which is this like, I don't know who was buying these things, but it's like a it's a whole.
That's the one that's in the suitcase or the briefcase.
Yeah. I've got it on the floor. I didn't want to like bore you with that, but it's interesting that this thing doesn't even come with the original 1500 manual. It just has these technical literacy things.
I think it did, because I think I have one
yeah.
that it came with all the original manuals.
Mine came, although I threw the other ones away because they smelled so bad. But with both.
And I know some of them came with a different cassette recorder. I know the one I have actually has the 2020, the Timex Sinclair 2020 tape recorder that came with it. But I've seen other ones like on eBay that it uses like a regular, like a shoebox kind of. I don't know who it was made by, but it wasn't the Timex 2020. It was a different cassette recorder, but it still had the 1500 in it.
Right.
The educational one I showed you a couple weeks ago, and that came with the 1500 manual, the tape drive, the 1500.
Yeah, it even came with a 2020 manual, right? So the cassette.
I think.
Yeah, the cassette. All the manuals should have been there, but so if yours didn't have one, then it got.
I didn't get this. I didn't buy this. This is not first hand, so.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. I've got both briefcases with and without the year 2020.
Yeah. I know they made them. It must have been before the 2020 tank came out, but it still had the 1500 in them. I've never seen one with a different computer. It's always the 1500.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
there's a system like that in Europe, which was a Spectrum-based case with tape deck. They are floating around in Europe like an equivalent Spectrum.
But with like a learning course.
I think that's what it was for.
Okay.
But I don't think it's this learning. I don't think it's this learning course.
No, the one that you have, Chris, is a company out of Ohio or something, Cleveland maybe, that specialized in learning through the mail is the best way to express it.
Right.
Yeah.
And David, you would probably know too. You remember. Well, I remember the ads back in the day. Oh, learn computers, learn to repair computers, and I think they had, like either it was a 1000 or the 1500 that they kind of built their curriculum around.
Yep.
But I've never seen anything from any of the. I think NCR was one of them. I don't know if not the cash register company, but I think it was still like maybe I got the name wrong, but it was they did a lot of that kind of thing, and they had a lot of ads back in the day of learning how to repair computers, because that was going to probably be as we know a good profession to be in, because people are going to have a lot more computers and they need to get fixed. So but I've just never seen any kind of curriculum or any materials from those companies that unlike these briefcase things, these briefcase things, man, that's very popular. I mean, that thing's all over the place, right? Whereas these other companies, you never see nothing, or I haven't.
It turns up every once in a while. Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing that we had in the UK, and I actually have copies of these. There was this thing called, I think it was like the home computer course, and it was like an interesting almost scam because you at some point you can't, when you realize it's not that interesting, you can't stop because it would be a magazine type thing, but it's like educational material with like complete breakdowns, plan views of like what computers look like internally and how does floppy disks work and all that kind of stuff. Very, very, very nice illustrations, but you buy like it's almost like a magazine every month.
Yeah.
And you would ultimately buy the binder to slide everything into. I can actually put I have them upstairs. I can go and get one, but that was the other like how to learn computers thing, but it wasn't in the UK. People are frugal, right? This idea of buying a dedicated machine with instruction manuals probably seemed like I'm not going to do that when I can just go to WH Smith's and buy a regular ZX81. We were cheap in the UK, so we'd want to get everything separate.
And kind of in conjunction with what Adam was saying, as far as like other books in addition to the manual. I know for the 2068, Sam's Publishing had the intermediate, I think the beginner intermediate guide, right?
Yep.
And then they had the advanced guide, and
Yeah.
those two were very good, books in addition to the manual, right? That really kind of delved into things more in depth than what the manual that came with the 2068 did.
Didn't we
So
talk about that in the very last episode, David? And you said like there was a write-in to get those
Yeah.
published because they weren't going to be written,
There was
or they were
they were
written but they weren't going to be published.
published. Yeah, they were in danger of not being published.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I have one of those suitcases as well with the 1500 and that kit.
yeah. So the reason I asked about who sort of who started BASIC with the 81 is I started BASIC with other machines, and switching to the 81 was a bit of a challenge. I mean, not just finding the keywords, right, but that it was a single keyword, single key press to get for and print and etc. And I think alluding a little bit to what Chris said about other books is, I'd done a lot of like what Chris did, a lot of typing in of programs from other books. And what I missed most was left string, right string, and mid string.
oh gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was
but the string slicing in Sinclair BASIC is so much better.
Well, and so that's the thing. That's absolutely true.
Well,
I have a hard time wrapping my 14-year-old brain around that.
And that's every time I see someone, they talk about Sinclair BASIC, I joke that they reduce it down to, yeah, they go back to they go back to some text you'll find that talks about the 81 BASIC, which was that it was an incomplete implementation of ANSI BASIC because the standard had just come out, right?
Yeah.
So one, they extrapolate that to the Spectrum BASIC, like the Spectrum added a couple commands. Well, okay, sure. And then it's kind of like the entry of Earth, mostly harmless, right? So they summarize Sinclair BASIC as, well, it's a lot like other basics, but it doesn't have left, mid, and right string. So what can you do with it?
Well, Ryan, I mean, the problem was I couldn't figure out, this is definitely a me problem. I could not figure out how to turn, a program written in, say, Microsoft BASIC or Dartmouth BASIC, whatever, that used left string. I couldn't figure out. It's like my brain stuck when it came to that. It's like, how do you make this work with the two, string splicing? And I will I will say it was embarrassingly late when I finally understood that. And by that I mean like probably within the last 25 years.
Yeah, I don't know. I loved the string slicing. I did some things that would probably be considered unnatural with it when I was doing my programming. So,
Well, and it is so powerful. I mean, the things that you can do with that string slicing is just amazing.
Well, also where it allows you, I remember you saw a piece of code I had written.
For thief?
I forget what it was,
Mm.
you where it was, but you could use the slicing on a literal.
Yeah.
Right. So you can have quote ABC quote parentheses and slice that with a variable to and then have programmatically just come out of this literal string. So there was those things about that made it unique, which were the string slicing, which it's kind of a different way. It's a little more elegant, I think. Um, but in the end, you could do kind of the same things. Now, that said, what it did not have was the Microsoft Basic style array of strings.
Yeah.
Okay, it had a character array when you went multi-dimensional. And so that was the other thing that made it difficult to convert some programs if they were utilizing that. But then those couple of powerful things of you could do certain syntaxes that other basics just wouldn't allow. And then you had the power of the val command. And well, I guess if we're limiting it to 81, later we would get the define function, and it had enhancements versus a lot of other basics. But sure, there were still some limitations, and that's usually what the reviews would focus on, is that basic doesn't have this. And so left, mid, right string were quite common, obvious ones that they would mention.
So did they change the basic between the ZX81 and the TS1000?
No.
Or was that
No.
the same?
Same.
Okay.
Same ROMs.
Okay.
So the other thing for me too is I really liked the pocket computers back in the day, and probably a lot of folks here did too. So I had a lot of Casio pocket computers, right? And so I had some Sharps that came in there later. But anyway, I got really familiar with Casio Basic, and what I kind of liked about Casio Basic that kind of tied me to the ZX81 was a lot of times they had keywords on the keys, right? Now, the basics that were in the Casio pocket computers, they weren't keyword based, like you'd type P and you'd get print like on a ZX81, but you could do a shift and P and the word print was above it. So when you did that, the whole word print would come out. But you could do it either way, right? You could type print, or you could just kind of use these shortcuts, right? They had the keywords above the keys, so you knew what would come up with it, but they weren't it wasn't tokenized basic per se like the ZX81 was built around. So I kind of remember seeing that on the Casio, the pocket computers, that you could actually do those pseudo keywords, and it would still, you could program that way. But of course, Casio Basic and ZX81 Basic basics are all more or less the same. It's just you got to figure out the idiosyncrasies, like you're saying, David, with some of the, left string, right string. Those aren't in all the basics. So,
by the time I got to the Timex Sinclair, I'd already been programming in AppleSoft Basic and Radio Shack, both level 1 and level 2 Basic on the Model 1. So by that point, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, there's minor differences. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, I got to do this a little differently. But it was like, for me, and like I was already, so we had already played around and learned some 6502 machine lang code by that point. And well, so the big thing for the TS1000 for me was, dude, it had a flight simulator in 2K of memory. That was incredibly cool. for me.
It required 16K though, right? Or
Yeah,
No,
I think you're remembering that a little different, but yeah, it did have a
did
flight
it?
simulator, but it was 16K. Yeah, it was
Was it
definitely
16K?
yeah,
Okay,
that yeah.
maybe I
I'm
did.
it's nice
Really?
that you remember that it fit into 2K, but I don't think it would have been a
I mean, you
pretty
couldn't take off or land.
right. It was already
And yeah, I mean,
mid-flight.
yeah, I
Well, I think
might
you
be
could
remembering.
land. You could land because you didn't take off, but I think you could land.
So it was a mid-flight simulator.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember you were able to land, but maybe that was just my inability to actually land the plane. I'm not going to make promises on my, ability as a pilot in
As
any
well,
I
no,
way, shape, or
remember it,
form.
there was support for in-flight bird strikes. Oh no, maybe you're making that one up.
A different one.
That might have just been a bad pixel on the screen.
yeah. Well, I know you could
But
crash the plane when you would try to land. You could crash it.
yes,
You know,
yes. And it made a noise when you did that. So that was appropriate. Um,
on the
but
ZX81, it made a noise. I don't know how
on the
it did that.
TS1000,
Yeah,
no,
I don't know. It couldn't make any
it didn't.
noise.
I flashed the
Oh, okay.
screen.
Maybe that was just in your mind that you were
Yeah, no. That's
crashing and burning
it
and
had the sound in the 2K version. I remember that.
oh
no.
boy, here we go.
You guys are going to screw up AI, you know that?
Oh, we can only be so lucky. That would be fun. Um, yeah, no, and like, okay, the noise when you crash, I'm pretty sure I'm conflating with the flight simulator on the Apple II, because we
It
did a
could
little bit of
be, yeah.
Makes
Or I
sense.
think the one for the
Um,
Spectrum or probably the 2068. Yeah, that those did make noise.
um, yeah, but no, and that's the thing. Like, I very quickly moved from the 1000 to the 2068, in part because the keyboard, I really had problems with the keyboard after, an Apple II and even a Model 1. The Model 1, really fun. Oh, you hit a key. Oh, you just got 6 of those. Well, touch typing on a Model 1 was kind of something you had to really actually watch the screen for. But the
Yeah, like
keyboard,
you're saying it had no keyboard debouncing? Is that basically what you mean?
Well, I think they worked on that over time.
Oh, I didn't.
they it, the earlier ones, there were issues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the early ones had a bounce issue.
So the problem that I had, it wasn't my ZX81, it was a friend's, and he quickly moved to Spectrum, and then that was the point in time when I bought one. But his initial ZX81 had the Sinclair RAM pack, which we referred to as wobble pack,
Mhm.
that you would use blue tack, but still, like, you'd put it on a tray, a flat surface, or something to try and avoid the chances that when you're typing things would crash. But the revelation was one of these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And literally I just got one and it comes with Velcro.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
It did.
This is the secret anti-crash device.
The other thing too is the edge connector that Sinclair was using on the RAM packs was utter crap.
Yeah.
So if they used a higher quality thing there, but again, we're getting into cost more money.
Right.
It would have been a better experience. It wouldn't have crashed as much. I wouldn't say it wouldn't crash at all, but it would have had a better force. That it would push down onto the fingers. But anyway,
One of,
Yeah,
one
just
of the RAM packs that I acquired appeared to have been hot glued to a Timex Sinclair of some sort, or
yeah,
ZX81, not sure which.
how you
I
feel.
only
Yeah.
got the 16K RAM pack.
That sounds permanent.
Well,
Nah, hot glue's not permanent. You can remove it pretty easily. The trick is to make sure it doesn't actually melt any of the plastic bits that you are hot gluing to other plastic bits.
Yeah, Carl, it looks like at least this American Sinclair RAM that looks like copper connectors, and then I'm not sure, but I think the Memorex one might be gold plated. Back to your point about
Yeah.
connectors.
Yeah, and if you look at the 1000, the 1016, they're just single fingers too. They're big, big fat fingers, and whatever metal they made them out of was pretty flimsy, so they didn't really have a lot of
Will
you know
someone
they
call Paul, please? Someone?
Say
what's
what?
that?
Will
You
someone
want to
call
wake up
Paul?
Paul? Well, he's
Paul?
he
Oh,
can't
yeah, Paul.
he can't hear us anyway, so he's sleeping.
Oh no.
That's
Um,
But yeah, I think you're right. I think the memo
Interesting
pack.
way for a screen to freeze.
He's
Be a
like, when am
riveting
I gonna get to
conversation.
talk?
it's just so riveting.
But I think the memo pack, yeah, they use more quality connectors for the edge card. So
Yeah, it's interesting how they introduced their own computers, thinking we make much better shit than Sinclair, and it completely flopped.
Yeah.
The 1016 Timex one, I sometimes had problems with that one, but I bought one of these, Z
oh, does
Expand.
it expand?
This is Z Expand Plus. This has a joystick port on it,
Nice.
and it uses the memory cards. There's one sticking in here now.
So this is a relatively recent thing.
It's from England.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the Z expand. Yeah.
Don't trust the British. They use ampersands instead of ands.
Well, the case
Trying to save.
is made by I forget the guy's first name. His last name is Hudson. He's in the United States. He made the case, but
They're completely ripping off the Memotech case.
Yeah, it is definitely inspired by the Memotech case. Yeah.
But this, I got 3 of them. I got 2 of them that are original Z Expand with the turbo board, and this one has it all on one board.
Nice.
This is the one that Charles Bronson made.
Does turbo go to 88 miles an hour?
Yeah, it's 32K.
We are, I know.
Graphics, memory cards, pretty similar to like what you're going to do on a 2068, like the Pico board.
Mm-hmm.
He uses that, and he has a joystick port on it. But my first computer I worked on was when I was at school, a community college, and the computer took up a whole room. And the first 10 weeks we had Fortran 4 was key punching, and the other 10 weeks was basic. And that one you had to type out print PRINT on a terminal. And do you know what BASIC stands for?
Beginner's
symbolic
all-purpose symbolic instruction code.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That was on my test. I got above average. I should
Not Dartmouth College.
stay with computers, but I didn't. I couldn't make it. I was trying to get an electronics technology, but the math was too much for me. So I got out of that and I went in radio and TV.
Some of you guys are kind of, this kind of brings up a funny thing to me is, we're not too far in age difference, but back then, like you're talking about the Model 1, right, which came out in 77. So in 77, I was 9 years old, right? But, when I got my ZX81, that was like 82, and I was old enough to save enough money to. So, I mean, there's probably like a 5 to 7 year gap there that some of you guys had more experience with other machines, right? Whereas, like, maybe me and David, David did some fourth, I think you were saying, right?
I'm 1 year older than you.
Really?
Apparently. Yeah. But the cool part was my computer lab in junior high school had a Model 1 and an Apple II. And so that was like, as soon as I hit junior high school in 7th grade, it was junior high school, so it was 7th grade. As soon as I hit the junior high school, I like found those computers and was messing about with those computers.
Yeah.
So
like Mowgli, our junior high had some Apples, some Model 3s.
Yeah, Radio Shack Model 3.
And we had in one of the schools, we had this bizarre computer lab that had Apples, CompuColors, Commodore PETs, and CBMs, and this weird IBM thing that had 8-inch disk drives, and you could boot it into BASIC or APL.
Yeah, that's the
51.
predecessor to the IBM PC.
Yeah, it was really
Uh,
expensive.
yeah, those were not cheap.
IBM expensive? No.
No, no, like compared, they were like $9,000
Oh,
back in
okay. I get you.
92-ish or something. But yeah, yeah. And then um, I was we lived in Western Mass, and so uh, I hung out on the UMass Amherst campus a lot and learned what we now call social engineering. And so there was an intro computer course, right, that they were making all the freshmen or whatever take at the time, and the kids would go to lecture, and the teacher would tell them, this is how you're going to log in to the mainframe, and they would then go to a terminal room and try to log in, and it would not be successful. And me and a couple of my friends, we'd sort of hang out and we'd offer to help them log in, and that would gain us an account for at least a semester or two, which freshman kids, they barely logged in, so that they wouldn't know. Yes, I was spoiled by Control Data's implementation of BASIC.
Yeah, what it just was striking me is, some of you guys are probably a few years older, so you probably had a more, like maybe even Jeff, you had more experience with other, like the PET and the Apples and the TRS-80s, because that were out way before. Well, hell, even the Ataris,
Yeah.
the Atari home computers and the TI-99s. I like I said, I knew some friends that had some of those machines, but that was way out of my price range.
Well, I think, you know, I like you knew had several friends, and there was a smattering of different machines. Um, and I was always curious to go play with them, but many of them, hardly any of them seemed that curious about them. They had them, but they didn't seem very curious about them.
Yeah, that
And,
was kind of odd, wasn't that? That these kids would have these computers and they're like, "Oh yeah, I can play this game. We put this cartridge in, so you can
Yeah,
do
they were
some
more
more."
they were more, games machines to a
Right. I
lot
came
of these
from the
kids.
Atari 2600 to my Commodore 64. So I went from a console first, and I had like a handful of cartridges, and then when I got to the Commodore 64, I had the manual. I did go through the manual, most of it, but then when I got my first disc full of um, games,
game over.
it was a lot of gaming going on.
Right, your first disc full of games.
Yes, yeah. Activision sent me. I was a beta tester.
Well, so
I
that was
actually literally pivoted years after the Sinclair stuff and Atari 8-bits. I had an Atari ST, and I was really happy because I was the geek. And then like Commodore 64 owners and stuff started getting STs, and all they wanted to do was copy games. I immediately fled to the Amiga because it was like way more interesting from like a machine architecture perspective and like more exclusive, at least for a few years. But it was interesting to see like this schoolyard wave, of how, the people who don't care about computers, they just want to play games. Where I like playing games, I also wanted to like learn how computers worked and stuff.
yeah, so I was kind of the question I wanted to ask was like, how many at least of this strangely selected group did the programming, right? You looked at the manual and went through and did the programming. I did. I like Carl went at some point, probably pretty early on, just kind of went through page by page of that manual and would go off on tangents on lots of the examples and things like that. But I had already had some a couple of courses on TRS-80 Basic there at the Tandy Center in Fort Worth over holidays.
Were they free?
Uh, I don't remember. I don't think so,
Okay.
but yeah, I don't think they were. But so I'd had another uh, dialect of Basic, and I probably had played on a few friends' Apple IIs by that time. But of course, I had, you know, only could dream of an Apple II, much less, you know, a VIC 20 or something, and I managed to save up enough to get this, right? So that's what I had, and I dug into it.
I think there's a maturity curve. Like I I use a ZX81. My first computer was a Spectrum. I don't think I really understood at that age point. I didn't really understand much about computers. It wasn't until the next computer I had, which was Atari 8-bit, where I think I started to do some Microsoft Basic. You have to pay extra for the Microsoft Basic, but it was like, much closer to what was being used in schools. Um, and then some 6502 assembler. But really, my breakaway for learning machine architecture and programming was Amiga. Well, Atari ST was 68,000, but there's not really much of a machine architecture for an ST. When you get to the Amiga, you've got a lot of interesting hardware and operating system stuff. So that's where, you were talking about page, those heavily thumbed pages of every single page of a manual. That was me on the Amiga. And there's some extremely good documentation. The other thing I liked about Amiga was the fact that the back of the manual, they had complete schematics. And that was a blow away for me. Like, really, you
Not in America, they didn't.
No. Yeah.
No.
oh, they did.
Yeah.
Back of the manual, all Amiga manuals had the schematics.
Huh.
Maybe you had some sort of
Yeah, I had the Amiga 1000 and the 2000 and
That was
yeah,
actually part of their open design principle.
maybe you could
Uh,
write to them for it or something. It definitely didn't come in the box.
Here they sold a whole bunch of insider information as the Amiga ROM kernel manual.
Yeah, they did. You could buy
no,
that.
That
that's
was
extra manual. So there's
Yeah.
there's a whole slew of those. But
Mhm.
what's that?
Here in the 81 manual is the bus pinout.
I'm not-
Nice. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good
Yeah.
start.
Oh, there's the wobbly pin.
Yeah.
Deke,
The 1000, by the way, definitely one of the manuals was it included schematics.
Hey, guys, can I just interrupt just for a minute? Because I know that we have two topics to cover, and we can get back to this one because it is fun to talk about. But we did want to just talk about planning for the show that's coming up in September.
Yep.
Um, and I don't know if anyone has, because Ryan, Carl, and I we've got tickets. Tickets to the show are free, which I didn't even realize you could just go.
Yes, do not pay any money for them. Apparently, there are people online who are trying to sell tickets in some goofy way,
Oh,
and don't pay any money for the tickets. So to attend the show will be free for anyone who wants to walk in. To have a table at the show will cost money. How much is still being worked out?
okay.
Okay.
Okay, do you still need
show
tickets?
is it? What
Is this
show?
VCF you're talking about? Sorry, you didn't say.
Yes, this is Vintage Computer Fest Midwest in Chicago, the second weekend of September.
Yeah,
Is
Mowgli,
Corey
will
the
they-
person that organizing that?
Sorry?
Is it Corey that's organizing that? Are you?
No, there's a group that organizes it.
Yeah, but Corey's the one that usually.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Not VCF Midwest. That's run by Jason and Mike, with the help of other people, including me.
Okay. But
So,
Corey. Okay.
Mowgli, are they still going to have a donation jar there somewhere?
oh yes. Well, the donation jar is actually what used to be a Sun IPX, but its internals have been removed, and there's a slot for donations there. If you remember where the floppy slot is.
Perfect use for a sun.
Now, let's not get started with that. Let's please keep things cordial at this point. But yeah, so hopefully sometime this month, they will figure out all of their table stuff. Because they're expanding it from last year, they have to redo the map slightly, and they're redoing the electrical and other things like that. So, how much it will cost will change slightly from last year. Last year, tables were $50 a piece.
Oh, that's a steal.
It'll probably be a little higher this year, because their electrical costs, especially with what they want to do, are going to go up a little.
Okay.
But one of the things that would be good for you guys to figure out, so by default, each person can really only sign up for one table.
Oh.
And you have to make a big case for getting more tables, but the easiest thing to do is for a bunch of you to sign up for one table and then request to be next to each other. And that's something that we can work out most likely. And I'm actually going to have to find out from them how many tables they have in an island, because between friends and people I know, it might be that I get my own island of people who
Man,
who
that's an
are
island.
asking for tables around me. But anyway, we can arrange it so that the tables are all together somewhere for you guys, but you will probably have to individually request tables because they won't let you say like, oh, our group needs 5 tables. At least to start.
Yeah, that's so Ryan's saying here to me, how many, like, I don't need a table. Carl wants a table. David wants a table.
Yeah.
Who else wants a table?
David Green, were you gonna?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna get a table. I got lots to bring, so.
Okay.
Mowgli, what do we need to provide in terms of outlet strips or
Those
access
will
to power?
pretty much be provided for you. That's a big part. So pretty much all of the stuff on your table will be provided for you, including power. There will be a separate sign up if you want a telephone connection to your table or multiple phone connections. There will also probably be a questionnaire about whether you want Ethernet. I don't think that 10 base 2 is an option, but I'm not positive. I don't remember precisely what network options there are, but I think it is mostly Ethernet at this point.
What? No token ring? Come on, man.
So Token Ring has not been nearly as popular at VCF as it used to be, apparently, in the business world. Interestingly enough, that's actually one of the networking technologies I never ever got to touch because I never dealt with a place that had Token Ring of any kind. But anyway, so all of that stuff will come in questionnaires down the road when they work out the table stuff. But all of that pretty much will be provided for you. Probably a good idea to have like 1 or 2 small power strips if you want to set one on your table and have a bunch of things plugged into it. But in general, there should be a power strip reasonably close to where your table is. And they probably will have some that you can borrow to basically make it up onto your table or to your table if the power strip's a little further away.
I can bring some too, just in case people need them, because I'm local, so I'll be driving. So,
local.
Sort of local. I'm still staying at the hotel because I don't want to drive every day because I'm 2.5 hours away. So
yeah.
David, how are we doing with the device coverage list that I posted?
Okay, so let me just share my screen real quick.
Or any additions to that, right?
Yep. And I'm going to drop the link to this Google Doc in the chat, and I'll send it to the email list so you guys can add yourselves or whatever. David Green, like he said, he's local, so he's gonna. David, what are you driving? like a van or something?
I have a Honda Fit, but the back seat goes down. I can get quite a bit in it.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, it's a good thing that the Sinclairs are small computers, right?
Sorry?
It's a good thing the Sinclairs are small computers.
Well, they all will fit in one box, but I might bring some other stuff too. I might bring that. If I finish that clear Commodore I'm making, I might bring that.
Okay.
I know, I'm sorry. It's a Timex group. I'm not supposed to talk about Commodore, but
Ryan, I've got you here for the 81, the back bit. I think that's unique to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I could bring stuff, but if someone's already bringing, a 1500, that kind of thing, I wasn't gonna bother. And I can just bring anything.
I can bring you a TS 1500 that doesn't work. I have two of them.
It
Sounds like a challenge.
Right.
because
Yeah, bring your broken stuff, man. That'd be great. We can fix it and sell it back to the group.
Well, I'm going to need it for my library actually, but I was going to talk to you about like if you're coming, if you want to actually play around with fixing stuff, or show me how to fix it.
Yeah, we can do that. The other thing too, I was kind of mentioning to the Albuquerque group is I'm kind of putting together like a talk too, which we can kind of get to, but that's another subject.
They just put out the email
Yes.
requesting talks.
Right. That's why I was kind of like, and I don't know that they necessarily will pick it, right? Because they say they're kind of going through a selection process because there's only so much room they have, right? But I think it would be kind of interesting, to have a talk about, Sinclair Timex. It's kind of like the title that I'm kind of going with is the Timex made home computers. What were they thinking? Because
trouble is they weren't.
yeah, well, because a lot of people they kind of know Timex was out there, but they don't really know the machines, And I think Timex is going to have a pretty big showing here at this particular show, right, with all of us.
Well, that was a question that came to my mind was, does anybody know these VCFs that they get anything outside the usual Atari, Apple, Commodore?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I don't mean like all of the old, oh, I got this old mini mainframe with an 8-inch disk drive, that kind of thing. But the other micros, Dragon 32, those kind of things.
I mean, I can speak for
everything
the
there.
VCF the Mountain View one when you're finished.
Well, Mowgli, you're
Yeah, I
involved.
mean, actually, there's a relatively shortfall when it comes to Sinclair stuff, but there's a plethora of different. It's Silicon Valley, right? So there's some people who've built their machines from scratch, including the processor from scratch, all the way to people presenting analog computers built out of Meccano. But then you do see people who've, there's one guy, I think it's from Arizona. He really likes to mix it up with some weirder things. For instance, he's like, one year he might come with a bunch of the Tandy color computers, but the smaller ones, not the big silver ones. And then another year he might come with Jupiter Ace. Then he's come with a series of like French Thomson machines. So if you're looking for oddities, there's definitely been some interesting oddities. Of course, since there was a number of companies that were started in the valley, you'll see people turning up with occasionally prototypes of things, Ataris, Apple prototypes, and so on. But you get a reasonably good assortment, but you don't get much of the British thing. There's one guy, Steve, his name's Steve, that usually turns up and has a pretty strong Acorn presence, some BBCs, and then some of the Archimedes stuff.
Yeah, I guess that was where I was sort of going with that was, is it that they're as soon as you say British or Sinclair, you're gonna get a what? And then never mind the details after that. And you kind of just have to expose them to non-American machines, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I really think there should be a good dosage of Sinclair stuff at some point. unfortunately, every year that I get involved in VCF, like this year's the 40th anniversary of the Amiga, so I'm putting all my energy in so VCF West is going to have a pretty big Amiga 40th component, which I'm helping to organize. So maybe next year I'll go all out on the Spectrum or something. But there's an assortment of things, but it's usually if you see somebody with a British computer, it's not even a mainline thing. It was like some oddity that somebody has, but there's plenty of other stuff going on. It's usually overloaded with Apple IIs.
But we should keep in mind, of course, that the Timex is an American computer.
Well,
I mean,
even still, you don't
that is
see
what it's
Timex.
trying to
You don't
say.
see Timexes there.
Really?
yeah,
So,
even though it was American, it's very tied to the
Oh, of
Sinclair
course, yeah.
stuff.
But I
I
think
would,
what Carl wants to do is he wants to say, "Hey, this is an American computer.
yeah.
How come no one remembers it?" Am I right, Carl? What was your idea?
Yeah, it's just basically a kind of a history, that hey, this is how Sinclair started out, and Timex obviously was making the machine, but it is an American machine. So but I think a lot of people don't, it didn't get a lot of press, right, and or it maybe got a lot of bad press, that it was a piece of shit. But I mean, regardless, I don't know that anybody's really had a talk about it. And you were kind of mentioning, normally the talks are 45 minutes, right? Or I think they're like basically an hour, but they have a little time for Q&A. And I was thinking, well, I'm probably going to ask for maybe 90 because there's a lot of machines. Because I plan to cover, everything, from the ZX80 all the way up to the QL and some of the Amstrad machines, once they bought Sinclair out.
you probably won't get extra time. You
No,
probably
I
will
was
have to
gonna
fit it
say,
into an hour.
Mhm.
There isn't really the ability to adjust the schedule in that way, because of the number of talks they're trying to get through and things like that.
Okay.
So,
Well, I mean, they did make it in the questionnaire. They asked, do you want more time? Do you need less time? So, they give you an option to ask for 90 minutes, so I
Oh,
don't,
okay.
yeah, I don't,
That might be new, because like
yeah,
last year, I think everything was basically fit into an hour.
yeah. And then they even have a thing
They
where
might
if
have
you
changed
don't get
that.
selected, do you want to do it like in a secondary room, right? Which they don't record. And I was like, well, maybe that would be good. But I was like, I would rather have it recorded because I want that out there, so that people can reference to
Oh,
it. I don't
now
want
that's
something,
interesting.
yeah.
Because last year we only had one, so we had one room, which was for the talks and the auction. Um, and in general, the auction happens on Saturday, starting at 4 and hopefully ending by 7 or 7:30-ish. Um, and but if they're talking about having another room, that's new because last year we only had the one room across from the exhibit hall that was used both for talks and for the auction. And that's the room that gets set up to be recorded and all of that stuff because the auction is recorded.
Right. So I mean, like David mentions, maybe we can have people there recording if I do decide to do a second room. But initially I was like, well, I don't want to do that because if it's not recorded, I would definitely want it recorded, right? I mean, even if it doesn't get out
Yeah.
on YouTube. But obviously, yeah. So there are different things, like you said. They ask if you need 30 minutes, if you need 90 minutes, and again, if you're okay with if you don't get selected for the main rooms, if you would be willing to do it in a secondary room, which they don't record. There's limited AV. They kind of mention that in there.
well, I
Yeah.
would say that if you select for a longer time, you reduce your chance of being in the recorded one.
It's possible, yeah. But I mean, I definitely can do it in 45 minutes. It would just, you bam, 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 bam. You have to go through it pretty quick. But I don't know. I haven't ever seen any kind of Timex stuff at any of the VCFs or any of these computer shows, where they kind of talk about it. And I don't even know how many people would show up. That's another thing. How many people would even be interested in that? Probably not very many. But
Well,
I just kind of
to be
go ahead.
honest, I would say if it's the longer it is, the less likely I'm going to go.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, I can just tell you from the VCF West case where the Amiga stuff's supposed to be a significant amount. Just the calculus is there's like 16 hours of presentation time, but they really only want to slot maybe 10 speakers with an assumption that everything should be an hour, but there's like this slop over that because of changing a guard. Um, and I don't. I think if you go for 90 minutes, I don't know what these guys are like, but they might just throw you turn you down.
right, right. Well, like I said, they did give you the option to ask for longer or shorter, but so yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be.
That's because they have the side room this year. That's new.
Okay.
So, and Jason didn't tell me about that part. Um, but that's part of the fact that I believe this year they're going to have 2/3 of the entire convention center. Last year, I think we had half of it. So, I know that, new contract with the hotel and the city, that the hotel, I think, runs the convention center for the city. So effectively, go for it, sign up for it. Um, I would check the box that says you're, willing to go in a side room. I think that will expand your chances definitely of being, and especially if you want more time than an hour.
Yeah, because it kind of surprised me that they were mentioning, oh, on these side rooms, you're looking at smaller audiences of like 70 to 90 people. And I'm like, smaller? Holy crap, that's a lot of people.
So you will find several hundred people at Saturday at 4 o'clock in the auction room.
Wow.
That room is set up for, I forget whether it's 300 or at least I think 200 maybe. And you will have people standing all along the walls.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
this
'cause
is
the other thing too, I kind of want is, I need to be able to hook up to a projector. I need to have a screen because I can be up there and talk, but I mean, I'm okay with public talking and stuff like that, and I try to make it lively, but it's always better to have visual aids. AV
I
and
can be your
stuff
visual
like that.
aid.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Hey,
this is a Saturday and Sunday thing, right?
You can be my Vanna White and hold
Right,
the
I'll be holding
machines
up
up.
all the computers for you.
I was going to ask what's her name.
But anyway, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there that I am looking to do that as a talk for the Timex community, Sinclair Timex stuff. So if anybody wants to get involved with that, I'm open to that. I don't necessarily want to hog all the time, but if somebody thinks that they are good at that and want to go ahead and give it a shot, definitely let me or David know, I guess.
Mowgli,
Yeah.
I have another item on my agenda for this. This is something that Adam reminded me is, and I'm looking at the list of people that I know are going to be coming. Restaurants nearby, eating situation nearby. What's the deal?
There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay.
It's right on the edge of where I-90 goes through or goes, I think, sort of to the side of Schaumburg. So it's on one side of I-90 and pretty much downtown Schaumburg is on the other side of I-90. And you can walk because I've done that. And they make it relatively simple. There's the exit ramp on I-90, there's actually a crosswalk.
Okay.
And then the rest of it takes you over I-90 and down into, and then along that road, the main road that it's along that crosses over I-90, there are a whole bunch of restaurants. I know there's a Chipotle, there's a Noodles, there's at least 2 or 3 breakfast places where you can get really good breakfast stuff. But there's a whole bunch of fast food, and it's within basically 15 to 20 minutes walk. There's just a whole bunch of food along that way.
Okay.
Driving is faster. generally.
Depending on the time of day and what day of the week it is, yes.
Well,
Cars are
I'm saying
convenient
just to
cars.
go across I-90 and into the food area. If you get on I-90, that's your own problem, and I make no guarantees on that.
Yeah.
Well, I know I'm going to have a car. So obviously David's going to have his car.
Yeah.
I don't know who else is going to be there with a car. So if we want to coordinate some kind of a dinner at a better place, not a fast food joint, someplace where we can get a good, not necessarily an expensive dinner, but a nice sit down place that we can get
There's a
a.
lot of places around there,
We're
Carl.
going to medieval
Okay.
times. He just found it.
Even if you
I'm-
had to get in the car and drive 10 miles, you can go.
Yeah. But I
Maybe.
mean, the thing is how many people I'm getting a large, well, large for these days,
Worst
but
case scenario, there's a Dave and Buster's really close. We can go there.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Well, no,
right.
I say this because I'm looking at a list of people that have said that they're coming, right? And it's 15 of us.
We learned a bad lesson in Rhode Island. The party of 15, they wanted one check in the restaurants.
Yeah, everybody wants that. That's going to be the situation.
Mhm.
So you can ask.
No, restaurants will not split checks for parties above.
It all depends.
Yeah.
There are places that will, there are places that won't. It varies considerably.
But I think Adam
Carl
was.
and Ryan are paying for me, so I don't have to worry.
But I think Adam was asking is because if we have two car, David's got his car. I know I could probably put 5 people in, well, 5 total in my car. So I mean that might kind of leave out. We might need somebody with another car. I don't know
I
who
have
else.
5 seatbelts in my car, but I cannot speak.
Yeah, right. You got to fit.
People in the back seat of my car.
That's comfortably 4. You could probably stuff 6 in there if you really
I can
wanted
fit
to.
3 small children in the back seat.
Well, I plan to drive, and I'm going to be bringing a Sienna van, so I think I can get 6 in there comfortably.
Okay, so I mean, as long as we can hit that 15 mark, so to speak, I think we probably, because I would like to do something like that. Go to a nicer restaurant than just a Burger King or a Chipotle, something like that.
And we're going to need a place where we can make a reservation.
Right.
Where
Yeah, so
We do,
I mean,
at
if
least-
you look up Schaumburg, Illinois, there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
That's effectively where you are. And it's actually one of the larger burbs in that section of town, but it's also like right around. So somewhere close by is also Rosemont, and I forget what the heck else is near Schaumburg. Elk Grove Village and stuff like that. I mean, so you've got various pizza options, of which Lou Malnati's is a popular choice.
Okay.
Jason, who runs VCF Midwest, really likes Lou Malnati's pizza, so I've had that a few times.
Well, the one other thing too is the time, right? So I'm thinking probably the best time is going to be Sunday evening, right? Because I think Friday everybody's coming in, nobody's going to want to go to dinner on Friday per se, and Saturday there's the auction and other stuff too. I mean, Saturday's still an option, I suppose, but I think Sunday may be the best time for everybody to kind of wind down.
Yeah, what time does it wrap up on Sunday, Ugly?
So the problem for me on Sunday will be that I will probably spend a good bit of time putting everything away, because we have to have the convention center cleared, I think, by Sunday at midnight. So all of the tables and stuff like that. So the convention center gives us a certain number of tables. Those we have to set up ourselves. We'll be doing that, I think, on Thursday, if I remember right, the way it works, but might be Wednesday night. I'm not sure. And then on Sunday, everything, like the people who supply the other tables and all of that stuff, will come along. Pretty much we have to have it swept and empty again by Sunday, I think at midnight, maybe 11 p.m. I forget which.
What time do we
And
have to tear down? What time do
so,
we have
yes,
to leave?
so a lot of us basically will be involved in teardown after anybody who has a table leaves.
Yeah.
So maybe Saturday would be better, but I don't know. You know, we can figure that out. But
Saturday, the big deal is you'd probably have to do it after 8 p.m. because the auction will, and I'm involved in the auction and involved in handing things out at the auction afterwards. So I
well,
probably
God
would not
damn
be
it,
able to make
Mowgli.
that dinner.
What the fuck, dude?
Yeah, well, again, I actually do sort of work for the convention, as it were.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, at least you got your priorities straight, I guess. So I can't fault you for that. I would be right there with you. You know, like I said, tearing it down. I was kind of thinking maybe go to dinner and then I'd tear down afterwards, but I don't know.
well, we can see how it goes on Sunday, and I mean, I don't have to stay for all of the time on Sunday necessarily, and things like that. So, I mean, Sunday is a better chance than Saturday. I can tell you, Saturday, there's no chance that I would get out probably before
Right.
like 9:30, 10 o'clock. So Friday or Sunday would be better for me, depending on which of those. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Mark. I guess if you were on the, I, I, I'm not that bad. Really, I'm not that bad.
Hey, Adam,
Yeah.
can you coordinate with somebody like David Green to identify a couple possibilities for Saturday or Sunday, and then we can put that together in a poll?
Uh,
I mean,
when you say you want me to coordinate with David Green, like in person when we get there, what do you
no,
mean?
no, no, no.
No,
Between
no.
for the next
Before.
couple weeks,
Oh,
you know, try to because
yeah, I
I
guess
assume some
so.
of this information is available on the internet. About
So you're talking about just pick places we possibly want to go and things
Yeah.
like that. I think
Yeah.
personally, if we make too big of a deal out of it in pre-planning, we're going to find out that we might want to just make the plans not exactly when we get there, but kind of when we get there
Okay.
but
Well, I know too, just because I do the HP events all the time, and we always have these dinners, team dinners, right? And it's a bunch of people. It's just if you can reserve it a couple of weeks in advance, that's always going to be a
okay.
better thing for the restaurant. You don't
Okay.
want to just show up Friday night and like, oh, we need to reserve for 15 peoples for the next, for Sunday
Well,
night.
we can't go there on Friday because we're not even getting to the airport until
Right.
like
Saturday.
Well, no, I know Friday is not the dinner, but I'm just saying we need to reserve it, a couple of weeks ahead of time.
Right.
Just to make sure we have a good experience, right? Because otherwise, I don't think they'll take your reservation,
And
it's too quick.
David, I'll come up with some possibilities for you. I'll give you a list.
Okay. And Mark mentioned, him and his family. Mark, you really gonna drag your poor family along?
They volunteered. They're getting super excited about it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, good.
There are a lot of things to do in Chicago. I mean, it is Chicago.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Well, unfortunately for most of us here, we're going to be hyper focused on this convention. So no extracurricular time for any extra, at least the way I
just
see
want
it.
to make sure it runs from 10 to 10 or something, right? Is that like the official hours?
Saturday, probably.
Yeah.
Sunday, we have to be out by 3. Well, yeah, basically it'll close at 3, I think, and then we start the teardown pretty much immediately at that point.
Okay.
But Saturday, the event,
so Saturday and Sunday are the official public day events. Friday is officially like vendor move-in day, I believe. But it's probably also the day where it's kind of the day where those of us who were there when it was like a 300 person event at one of the other hotels back when it was smaller, and it was just like, you knew all the people, or everybody there was like into the actual repairing and rebuilding of computers and stuff like that. So Friday is kind of a slow day where it's not really officially open. It's not open to the public, but anybody who's got a table can be in there and can be setting up their stuff. Also, we'll probably be doing a whole bunch of setup on Friday for the event for the whole thing itself.
And
How late can you stay on Friday to set up?
That I don't know for sure. There's probably going to be people around until reasonably late on Friday.
Because we're getting in kind of later, so we probably won't be setting up until probably 7 o'clock, somewhere around that time frame.
Saturday morning.
Well, I'd rather be already set up by Saturday, but it depends, I guess.
Okay.
I can stay up late on Friday and get set up in 2 or 3 hours. So I'm just kind of thinking maybe like 10, maybe 11 o'clock on Friday night, getting set up. That way, it's all ready for Sunday or Saturday when people are coming in.
Okay. Come on, all you got to do is throw a few black squares on the table, plug them up. It's not like you're trying to fire up a vax or something.
Well, yeah, I just I've this ain't my first rodeo doing computer stuff too, but just like I'd rather get it all done the night before, rather than setting it up on Saturday.
Yeah, right.
Because you're gonna have the public's gonna start coming in, and you're gonna get distracted, right? People will be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Blah blah blah. And so, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, Saturday is going to be wild. There's a lot of people.
Right. What are the open hours on Saturday? I'm not seeing that on the list on the page on the Facebook.
To some extent, well, I don't know what he has officially.
Oh no, it says right here 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Okay.
Yeah, okay, so to 10 p.m. Yeah.
Okay.
Man, and Sunday is at the same 9 to 3?
9 to 3.
Or 10 to 3? Okay.
9 to 3. Okay.
How many people in the public normally attend this event?
We stopped counting. We used to have badges that people could write their name on. The last time we had it at a different hotel, we ran out of badges. There were 1,500 badges. So I think our estimate for last year was somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people, but it's a lot. I'm just going to say it's a lot.
Carl, if you get your word out about your talk, there'll be like twice that many this year.
Yeah, sure.
It gets bigger every year. Now, I didn't make it last year because of my accident, but it's huge. It's crowded.
Well, I do like the talk things because I've seen the ones from the other YouTubers, like Adrian Black. They usually get together all together, and they there's a couple of women too that are into they do certain things, but they're all together on the stage, and you get to ask them questions, I guess. And so I just kind of like the idea of bringing Timex and Sinclair. Timex was an American company. We did make computers here, or they did, and that's especially for us, right? That's kind of where a lot of us got our start. And I just think it's an underrepresented genre, or computer that I still think is big enough, to warrant something like that. It's not like just a Jupiter Ace or something, really, really niche, right? That or niche, whatever you call it, that it's like one or two machines. Sinclair Timex had even when you throw the Portugal stuff in there, which I plan to as well, Portugal had a bunch of machines too, but they're all based on the Sinclair stuff, right? So
Carl, to answer your question real quick, Jason says the dock has to close at 10 p.m. due to noise ordinances. So That's the upper limit. But they prefer to get out earlier if they can, essentially.
Oh, on Friday?
Yeah, on
Friday
Friday.
setup,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So maybe try to set up maybe by like 9:30 maybe at the most.
Okay.
So I
'Cause I
think
think even you, David, would want to get some stuff set up, beforehand, but before
as
Saturday.
much as I can, yes.
Yeah.
I see a new name, Paul, who just joined maybe a few minutes ago. Paul, you there?
ADL?
Yeah.
I think he's got his hand up, isn't it? Oh no, that's my cursor.
Hey, Carl, when you mentioned ladies, were you referring to Jerry?
I don't know. There's the two. I think
Donaldo.
there's this one.
Oh,
there's
okay.
a one lady that does. She's like a Mac something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She always seems the Mac doctor. I think she brings around this little, Macintosh that she's always carrying around with her. It's got like a face on the screen.
Right.
She was there, and then she's got her friend. I can't remember her name, but she's in the computer thing too. But I mean, it's just a little rarer to see the women, But that's all the more power to them. I have no problem with that. It's just welcome to the jungle.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Ellsworth, mostly Commodore 64 and then Amiga stuff, but she definitely has a fondness for Sinclair. And actually, I was opening a machine at her office. This Sinclair Italian monstrosity.
Show that again. I did not get a good look
Let
at that.
me spotlight you.
It's. I think I showed it last time.
That's bizarre.
It is bizarre, and you know what?
Come
The
on.
chef photographs on the inside. It's even more bizarre on the inside because they've soldered individual wire strands from the Spectrum motherboard to a little PCB edge connector they built to go on the edge of the device. And it's all like low voltage, wiring, and they use the same type of wire, low voltage wire, going from the mains connector to the transformer. It's like a fire hazard. Yeah, it's just absolutely.
Well, I definitely haven't seen that before, so I won't be including that in my talk. It looks interesting though, but there are tons of machines, especially the clones, right? That I just
yeah. But this isn't the clone. This is actually
right.
a real board in it. Where do people for this group? Like, if I wanted to post pictures of that, where do I post them?
To there's a list on groups.io. Let me just pop that in the chat.
Okay, all right. So I can bug you with that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's actually we use it quite often. So
yeah.
Yeah, a couple of us aren't really Facebook people, so we don't.
Right, that's why.
I don't have a Facebook account, so
yeah.
Is the PC 8300 part of your show?
It's one of those, things that is definitely in the orbit. I mean, folks, when it came out, the Timex users were really interested in it because it seemed like it was an 81, but of course it wasn't. I had one, and it was a bizarre little machine.
Between all of us, we probably have one of each of all of them.
I don't have one of these. What is it?
It's like the Lambda 8300. There's a PC 8300. It's the same kind of thing, but in the US.
Yeah, it's got like 10 different names.
Oh, that thing.
That thing.
It's a lot like the ZX80, the Timex Sinclair.
It's a clone, right? It's not.
It's a clone, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's an older one.
Yep.
Yeah, won't be covering that during the talk either. I only have 45 minutes.
Will you be covering the Spectrum next? I've been hearing about.
Yep, I will talk about the Spectrum next because that's obviously the end game, right? That's kind of the end. And I guess David actually just put out a post where I guess they're getting ready for another Kickstarter.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Chris has one on the shelf over his in the upper left, over his right shoulder.
Version 2. I have the version 1 in Florida. Also, will you be covering the Vegas?
No, probably not. What is the Vega? Is that
it's a weird little, it came, is it
Man, what don't you have? I mean,
because I do have the original, the first Kickstarter Next, Spectrum Next. I also have the one that Retro Games came out with, right? That called the Spectrum, which is kind of the latest.
Yeah.
One.
So this is
that thing. Yeah. The
but then there's this that doesn't exist.
Right.
I'm not showing you that.
Step in your hand? I don't get it.
Well, there's a whole controversy. I'm not going to get onto because this thing's recorded. So
okay,
there's a big controversy over these things.
Yeah. There was a whole.
David seems to know what it is, but okay, we'll leave it.
Yeah, it's a Spectrum handheld, and
no, we'll leave it at that.
I don't know that much about it, except that what I do know is, like Chris is sort of alluding to. Let me spotlight you again, Chris. What Chris is alluding to is that it was announced, and it was I don't know if there was fundraising for it or what, but
there was fundraising for it.
It was fundraising for it, and it did not officially, like Chris is saying, did not officially ship, but a couple turn up every once in a while.
Yeah, beta testers had them. They were harassed by certain people. Board of directors left.
Mark seems to have one.
Oh yeah!
Wow. Okay.
This is from the Facebook Vega Recycle group.
Oh, interesting.
They found some spares and sold them.
Wait, so is the one with the white screen, is that real or a mock-up?
The screen is a mock-up.
Okay.
It's just an empty case.
Empty case.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember seeing those, and I guess what you're kind of trying to allude to is the Kickstarter kind of died, and people probably got pissed off because they gave money to it and they didn't get anything at the end.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's more of a story there.
Oh, okay.
I'm not getting.
Well, I don't want to get into it. Like you said, it's recorded, but I mean that's
right.
Yeah.
There was there's some not so nice people in the world, put it that way.
But I will not be really covering those. I mean, there's just too many machines to.
So you want to be brushing up on your Russian?
Nope, I'm not gonna. I'll talk about the clones that were over in the Soviet
bloc.
We'll
be talking about ESP32. What are you going to be talking
about? The mainstream machines that we all know and love.
I think it should maybe start out talking about start with the Timex, the other American computer, and then you kind of go back to the others.
So as a Brit, I find this whole conversation a little bit weird because it was a British computer that you kind of got a copy of, right? That's the way I kind of perceive it from, like, it wasn't a US design. It was just re-lipsticked.
Well,
I'll shut up now.
I do kind of have
I got a new idea. A whole bunch of us on a panel, and we argue about that.
That's an excellent. But by the way, like in all fairness, the stuff that was shipped to the UK or shipped in the UK, I think I mentioned this last time. I blew my mind in later years realizing there was a completely different world, right? First of all, the stuff that Timex, when Timex licensed it and made their own variants, they were much better quality. And there was many more interesting things, right? Like the whole FD2000 or all these derivative floppy disk drives and things. It's just like all this stuff I was oblivious to. We didn't have the internet. There was ZX81, a couple of derivatives of the Spectrum, and then the normal lineage of the UK Spectrums, right? Up to when Alan Michael Sugar got his tacky fingers on it.
It reminds me a lot of, I don't know if it was 82 comes to mind, but probably 82, 83, mostly 82, I think. where, once you get outside of, the big American brands, basically, there was just like every 2 weeks, depending on the magazine, there was just something new,
Right.
completely different, new, and it was so
and not
interesting.
compatible.
And not compatible in some ways, that mattered, some ways it didn't. And yeah, at the end of the day, it was like, what games do you have, really? But there was all kinds of things, and so that to me is kind of interesting in the sense that these shows have been going on for how many years, and they're still spiraling around on Ataris and Commodores.
So many other
Well,
things.
my big thing with the show or the talk is, yes, these are Sinclair designs, but Timex was making them for Sinclair, right? So that's kind of where the thing was. Well, hey, we already make these things. Why don't we just market them in the USA for you, right? A lot of people probably don't understand that. And then, Timex wanted to do the same thing with the Spectrum, but then they were like, I'm not sure about the FCC thing really killing that. I think that was probably part of it, but not all of it. I think they just saw the other machines, right? And so that's when Timex was like, well, we can't bring a machine out that doesn't have a cartridge port. We can't bring a machine out that doesn't have sound.
I think they totally were going to bring it out as is, and that
yes, they were
ran into that wall. It gave them the excuse to go redo it because they got to redesign it anyway. I mean, that's what
Well,
the said.
I mean, I don't know what the timing is, but the shit hit the fan, right? Like, so, if you look at, predates this, the Atari 8-bits went absolutely overboard with FCC, aluminum cast casings and
right,
stuff.
right.
And then Joe Decor, who designed the Atari 8-bits, went and spoofed Texas Instruments and convinced them of something that cost them a year of development because of the whole modulators and the way they thought they were going to get to circumvent FCC. But so that's surprising. So how did these guys get away with it?
If you open
they have silver inside.
it's silver.
Yeah.
Really? Is that sufficient?
Yeah,
but,
that was sufficient.
Oh yeah.
Why did that work? Why did that not make the Spectrum work?
Like I said, we don't know.
Power of the Spectrum.
Well, we don't know because I know some of the CZ2000 cases that I have from Serenzi or however you call it. They are sprayed silver inside as well, right? Because they would have probably made the Timex 2000, for Timex in here, if it came to that. But the other thing is, what I wanted to get to is that Timex did have a hand in making their own, footprint in the home computer market, right, with the 2068 especially. But then you have
Carl. When you finish this thought, I just want to let David wrap it up.
Right, we're almost out of time. And then the other thing is just once that happened, then we got to talk about Timex Portugal, because Timex Portugal had a lot of engineering effort. They did a lot of engineering stuff. The Timex Sinclair 1500 is really a Portugal machine. Timex of USA really didn't have a lot to do with that. So, and then Timex Portugal came out with all these other machines, the TC 2068, the FDD 3000, they came out with a lot of stuff on their own once Timex exited the American market, right? So they kept going. And, I don't think a lot of people, that's kind of what the talk's about, is just to kind of educate people on, Timex wasn't just this little black doorstop computer, right, that everybody kind of thinks of. It
wasn't just, I like how you say that. It was that and more.
Exactly. Right. And
not
so
only could use it for your doorstop.
And I think people will see that obviously when they come to our area in the DCF, because there'll be all kinds of Timex stuff going on there. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of my idea on the talk. But like I said, and going to the next, right, like you said, 30 years later, here's an FPGA design, and then then the retro games one that came out that's just a really, really
all right,
cut down design. Anyway,
I will say that 2068 does not make a good doorstop.
No. You have to put more weight into it.
Well, you don't have the size of doors like we have in Albuquerque, so.
Okay, apparently I don't.
Barn doors.
That was a big thing with like Commodore. I was very fearful of the whole cheapness of the Sinclair stuff. If you ever get to talk to Bill Hurd, who was the designer of the Commodore 128 and then their Plus 4 series, they produced those specifically to combat the fear of Sinclair. And they actually did a whole offer where they were buying back ZX81s.
Yes.
And there was a whole joke about the fact that they were using them as doorstops that
Mm-hmm.
Bill uses to this day.
Well, that's the thing is that basically Commodore did that, right? So the cheapness. So like you're right, everyone was making a competitor to the TS-1000. TI had the 99.2 design done, price point was $100, but by the time they were going to ship it, Commodore had forced them to cut the 99.4's price to $100 after
Well, the whole market
Hey,
crash
guys.
in 83,
Guys.
and that kind of just killed everything. So anyway,
Guys.
yeah.
So David, what are we doing next?
Well, and
when is our
I
next
have
meeting?
one quick question. I know you want to get to end time, but is there anything really on emulation at this, or is this all hardware?
It's really all hardware on the talk, kind of a Timex Sinclair history.
Oh, I'm talking the conference. I've never been to one.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's all hardware, I think, isn't it? Mowgli?
Oh, yeah. No, this is mainly on vintage hardware. I mean, there probably will be some people who have some emulation stuff, maybe, but I don't really remember that. Part of that is because I have no interest in the emulation stuff, so I don't really pay attention to it. But the vast majority of it is actual hardware, physical hardware, in some form or another that will, in most cases, run and do things.
There is, by the way, I'm sure it's happening in Illinois, but like the West, you'll see a lot of classic hardware with a lot of like retro, like new things, or probably FPGA or CPLD or or Raspberry Pi based augmentations, whether it's like extra RAM or CPU acceleration or you see a lot of this Frankenstein editions.
Funny you should mention that, Chris, because we have that too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right. So our next meeting is going to be on a Sunday, ordinarily scheduled for June 15th, which is Father's Day. So it's going to get pushed out to June 22nd. Because some of y'all have children. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is we can continue this particular topic on Sunday, and I can put it on the agenda, the arguing about the features and the sales tactics of Commodore and TI and etc.
Well, I do like the fact that you guys brought that up because I hadn't thought about that in the talk. Because even Radio Shack, the MC10 is all about Timex.
I was going to bug you about the MC10. I just picked one up earlier this month. So
yeah. So I mean, the MC10, like you mentioned, and of course the 99/2, and maybe even part of that the CC40. And then Commodore's
Plus 4.
Right.
So David, does that mean we're going to have 2 weeks in a row where we have meetings at the last week and the first week? I mean, right away.
No, because there are like 5 weeks in June, and the first is the first. Yeah, the first Monday in July is
the first day
the 7th.
Okay.
So it'll be like 3 weeks.
10 days or something.
Yeah. It'll be fine. It won't be back to back.
Okay.
All right. So on Sunday, the one on the 22nd, let's plan on helping Carl work on his presentation.
Oh
yeah, I mean, help me flesh it out, right? Because I kind of have what I want in my mind, but you guys bring up some good points. But again, if I only have 45 minutes, I got to kind of pick and choose what I really want to focus on.
Well, I think Carl needs to put out just a little brain map of what you're thinking generally.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's just going to cover the main machines, right? That's kind of
You guys can all work on his outline with him.
Yeah, exactly, Carl. Build an outline in Google Docs and we'll help you. And then on Sunday, we can argue vociferously about it.
And then at the end of June or July, when they'll deny that I can't do the talk.
But you know what, Carl? Maybe you could just like do it from the floor.
Yeah. Well, they may give me the second boot, the outhouse in the back. They'll go do your presentation out there. Yeah.
Hey, I just had an idea. Someone keep an eye out for I don't know if you stumble upon some vintage Timex banner. I don't care. It just needs to be giant. We hang above the table.
Or make one.
Actually, Ryan, I'm thinking about getting one made.
Because then people will go, "What's Timex about?"
We should all just take out our watches.
Right.
And then they'll be like, "Oh, that's what that talk is. The Timex made home computers." What were they thinking?
David, if you get a banner made, you have to have it in a format like the old banner programs would give you. So.
Oh, you mean like the paper banner?
Yeah.
Oh, I was talking about
print shop or something.
No, I was thinking something that looks real.
A fabric
something that looks legit, like you were at a CES.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Woof.
Now, this next meeting, what time on Sunday?
We meet at 2:00 Eastern on Sundays. Okay. And Phil, I'm guessing that you got the sort of overall newsletter and not the meeting reminder newsletter.
I got an email reminder.
Okay, so I send out a reminder about each meeting prior to the meeting. I try to do it at least a week in advance. I'm not so successful sometimes. Phil, did you sign up for the email list
back on it
that I put in the chat?
I'll have to check. I think I did.
Okay, yeah.
And so the same thing with Paul too. Paul's back. I guess got to walk the dog, man. I totally get that. Sometimes they let you know. Mm-hmm.
All right, gentlemen. Yeah, it's 5 a.m. where Mark is.
All right, guys. And I want to thank Ryan for joining me in person today, actually. He just got his internet back a little while ago, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
Have a good